Animals be making energy 7 days a week. Respiration, convert glucose to ATP. Yeah. You get that glucose and 6O2, convert it into water, CO2, and ATP. This starts off with glycolysis in the membrane. 2 ATP are required first. Make that glucose a 3C sugar, convert that to 2 pyruvates, ATP, and ADH. Move it to the mitochondria. Pyruvate oxidation time. COA is added, making a COCOA, carbon dioxide. Next up is the Krebs cycle happening inside the matrix. By the way, it happens twice for each pyruvate molecule. Add a compound, make some citrate, get that CO2, NADH, FADH2, ATP. Now let me tell you what happens. Phosphorylation in the membrane, electron carrier drop off an electron, go to the easy centromer H ions, often the final electron acceptor. It then makes H2O. But what about our H plus ions? Well, they diffuse their ATP synthase, producing 34 ATP molecules. Respiration is done in the carbon cycle. But how do plants get energy in the carbon cycle? They don't eat food like animals in the carbon cycle. They got photosynthesis in the carbon cycle. CO2, H2O, and also making glucose and O2. Our first step, dependent reaction, hit PS2, splitting that water, going down ATC, making energy. At PS1, they get more energy. Now we make NADPH. Now the H plus, making a gradient from the lumen to the stroma. They diffuse through synthase, making our ATP. This NADPH move to the next cycle, which is known as the Calvin cycle, takes place in the stroma, has 3 phases, and it's fixation with a Rubisco. After CO2.RUBP, we got PGA. Now it's time for reduction. Here's our ATP and a DPH. In reduction, they use their energy to turn PGA into G3P. When G3P makes a lead glucose, but what happens to the rest of them? It don't leave, it makes RUBP in this phase called regeneration. Well, it has to spin around 6 times to make 1 molecule of glucose. Yeah, that's the end of the carbon cycle. Animals respirate in the carbon cycle. Plants photosynthesize in the carbon cycle. Now from the top, let's recap the carbon cycle. Animals eat plants that store carbon in the carbon cycle. I'm talking CO2 in the carbon cycle. Make it go in a loop, that's the carbon cycle. Yeah. There's some carbon in this house. 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 There's some carbon in this house.